Thank you. Ms. Sewell.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. You know, I came to the House Ways and Means Committee to fight the war on poverty, not to hurt the impoverished. And I think that today's testimony and today's hearing puts a spotlight on what I think is a glaring problem, which is the fraud and abuse. You know, we have heard time and time again that the false narrative, in my opinion, that the people living in poverty seek to take advantage of this public life-saving program like TANF, when in fact, I think this hearing has shown that major fraud occurs when these programs on the state level are taken advantage by state officials entrusted to manage these programs, not by struggling parents and families. Most TANF recipients in my district, I have to say, and I understand half of the families receiving TANF include support for our children. So the face of TANF in so many ways are our children. That makes, I think, the fraud and abuse even worse because we're literally taking money out of the, out of the hands of children. This misuse of TANF funds poses a serious threat to those health conditions and make life even more difficult for those children and their families. I think we need accountability, but at the same time, I'd like to explore what states like Mississippi are doing. I represent the state of Alabama, and we make it very, very difficult for people to apply for TANF. And I'd like for you, Mr. George, to talk a little bit more about what the barriers are and what reforms. You know, this hearing is really about acknowledging a problem. All of us acknowledge it, but what are we going to do about it, right? And I think it's appalling that if the state of Mississippi is receiving funds back because of this fraud and abuse, that they're not directing those funds to the needy families that that didn't get the funding that they needed because of the fraud. That's one reform, and I know that the Integrity Act that many of my colleagues are authors of and I support would do just that. Can you talk to us about what the reforms should be? Sure.
You know, as I mentioned before, the requirement that you do an upfront job search is something that definitely needs to end. The drug testing requirements, that prevents people from applying. And we know everyone that has used drugs is not a terrible person or a criminal, but if you know that's in your system, you're not going to apply for these benefits. And also the sanctions that can happen when a person fails to make a meeting, a routine meeting with their counselor with TANF, you could be sanctioned in other areas and lose benefits. There are so many things that are put in place to make it difficult for people to be able to access benefits, and that prevents folks from even trying to get it.
In so many ways, what you're saying is that people distrust the system, and also that we set up barriers that make it much, much harder for real needy families to get help. And, you know, I think that we have to work with the state level. When we send these funds down, we need to give the proper guardrails and put those proper guardrails and not leave it to ambiguity, so much ambiguity that this abuse could actually fall within the realm of possibility and therefore happens. And so, look, I think, Mr. George, if you could talk a little bit about, you know, the punitive nature of a lot of these barriers.
Yeah, I mean, it starts from a place of the government not trusting folks and being punitive to low-income folks. We apparently trust a program to receive $86 million a year, even though they've committed outstanding acts of fraud, and there are no requirements, no sanctions put on that program. But people that are receiving just $260 a month, we want to check their income every month. We want to verify that they went on a job search. We want to drug test them. We want to scrutinize them as much as possible. When I'm simply saying that I don't distrust everybody in my state. I don't start from a place thinking someone is trying to game the system. I think people are trying to do good by their families, and they're trying to make it in a tough place to make it. And to treat people essentially like they're criminals and have their tax returns even audited for receiving benefits is insane to me, and it's very hurtful as well.
And it seems to be costing the children who it's supposed to benefit their ability to get ahead. So, Mr. Chairman, before I close, I just want to reiterate that I think there's a lot of bipartisan support in us coming together and trying to find some solutions, and I, for one, would love to help to lead that charge. Thank you.
Absolutely.